Hello and welcome to the How to Talk to Girls podcast. This is your host, Trip Kramer from tripadvice.com. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking to Mrs. Damona Hoffman. She is married, and she even talks about that in the podcast itself, talking about when to know when to move in with a girl. And we go over every single aspect here. I'm talking when to know, how to ask, what you should be doing when you first move in with a girl. What's the checklist of things you should be going over together to make it successful? So we're going over everything today. And it's cool because she is a TV star. She's going to be telling you in just a minute about her upcoming TV show that she's on the FYI network. Pretty awesome. Just want to give you a few updates over here as well, just so you know, putting out more videos on the YouTube channel. So if you are not a fan of the YouTube channel or you have not checked out the YouTube channel, well, I want you to check it out, youtube.com/tripadvice. There is a great video that I put out recently that all the guys are raving about. It's all about how to get a girl to nonstop think about you. And I'm going to give you 3 ways on how to do that. So if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, go over there and check it out. Other than that, pretty much nothing new with me. I am in Los Angeles at the moment. I'm going to be doing some traveling soon. I'm actually really excited about it. I'm going to be doing some trips to Barcelona, Amsterdam. I'm going to Italy with my girlfriend. So very, very pumped about that. That's coming up here. But don't worry, still putting out podcasts, still putting out episodes, and you'll be, well informed of any other changes that might come. But either way, you can always look forward to a podcast coming every single Wednesday. All right, cool. So let's get into it. Here is my interview with Damona talking about when and how should you move in with a girl. Hey, Damona, how are ya?
I'm so great, Trip.
It is so good to do this with you. It's been long overdue. Damona and I have known each other for many years now, and I've been on her podcast, Dates and Mates, twice, and it's taken too long to get her on the show today. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. And yes, I don't invite a lot of repeat guests, so you're very special to me.
Ooh, I like that. That always feels good. Always feels good to hear. Well, for
It's
the
true.
guys who might not know you or have not listened to Dates and Mates or seen some of your TV shows, because you are a TV star, maybe give the guys a little bit of a bio of where you came from, how you got into this, and some of the cool things that you're doing now.
Well, I actually started out as an online dating coach. I met my husband online way before it was cool. I'm not even going to tell you how many years ago. And people would come to me saying, well, I tried online dating and it didn't work. And when I look at their profiles, I'd realize that there was a mismatch between what they thought they were saying and who they thought they were being online and who they actually were coming across as and what they were actually looking for. So I started writing profiles and got so successful at that I turned it into a business. But then I realized I was getting a lot of guys and girls on dates, but they weren't turning into something more. So I became certified as a dating coach to help people through the process of pre-date all the way to pre-marriage.
Wow. Okay. So you cover it all.
I cover it all, but once you get married, then you're somebody else's problem because the price is going to go up on that.
I love it. Very cool. Very cool. And and now tell them about what you're doing right now.
So now I'm hosting a new TV show for FYI, and it follows 3 couples who are moving in together for the first time, and they have to ask and honestly answer a series of deeply probing questions that really illuminate the issues in the relationship. And then once we've shined a light on them, then that's when I come in and help them through exercises to work through the issues that have come up and see if this is someone that they really want to be with forever or if somebody at the end of the experiment needs to move out.
So then you are the perfect person to be talking about today how to know when to move in with a girl and how to know or how to make it successful.
That's what I've been doing.
I love it. That's great. It's funny because this is not a topic I see talked about often, or maybe I'm not doing the right research, but I just feel like it's something that guys at the very least aren't asking. I feel a lot of guys, they have more struggles around how to get a girl but by the time they get the girl, they kind of just go with the flow, and what happens, happens. But I think that guys should be really looking and analyzing and being proactive at knowing all the different stages of a relationship, even this stage right now where you guys are at the point where you've been dating for some time and you're saying, hey, let's take this next step. Now, I know if this was maybe 30 years ago or even 20 years ago, that might not even happen. A lot of people back in the day would get married and then start living together. But nowadays, it's more common for people to move in together, test out what marriage would be like, and if it goes well, then there's a proposal and you get married, etc. Right? So
That's what's happening, but I think people are going about it the wrong way. And there actually has been a huge increase in cohabitation, but there has been a decline in the marriage rate. So while people may be thinking they're moving in together for a trial marriage, they're actually just creating a new phase of relationship that may or may not be headed to the future. And I think it's crucial that if any of your listeners are considering moving in with a girl, or even at the beginning phase of dating someone, there are certain things that you have to really identify before you move in together, because once you're already there, one, it becomes much harder to extricate yourself from the situation. It becomes more expensive. It becomes more drama. And also, once you've moved in together, sometimes it's harder to address the questions that you should have figured out long ago. So we can talk about, I don't know if you want to talk about what some of those questions are, or if
yeah.
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
No, well, let's start from the very beginning. Let's get into the mindset of the guy. He's been dating a girl for some time. Of course, it's kind of like insert number here. It could be anywhere from 1 month all the way to a year or 2 years. So let's just start there. Like, when should a guy be thinking about moving in with the girl? Should he do it? Should he move in with a girl before they get married? What's your opinion on that? And let's start there with kind of timelines.
Well, look, you've been on dates and mates trips, so you know I'm all about modern love made simple. So I'm not going to give you any old-fashioned dating advice like, well, it's best if you just wait until you get married. I didn't do that. I don't think that that works in today's world. And so I do believe in the sort of trial marriage, as you were saying, but it's about the mindset that you have going into it and setting up expectations so that you're both on the same page when you get there. So I'd hate to put a timeline on it. I will say one of the couples on my new TV series, they moved in together after about a week or 2 weeks of dating, before the show, actually. Then they moved out. He moved into her place. She moved into his place a couple weeks later, then moved out. So then they're now moving in together for the third time, and it didn't work out before. So, stakes are high to try and make it work this time. But to me, that is a little bit too soon. But, anything beyond a few months in, I've seen work if you both have the same expectations of where the relationship is headed. Is it a step towards marriage? Is it a step towards convenience? Are you doing it to save money? Are you doing it so you don't have to drive across town? And making sure she has the same understanding, because Trip, like a lot of times, the ladies, we like to lock it down and we think, just because you're moving in together, that means he's going to propose. And if you are not in that mindset, I guarantee you, she's probably thought about it. And if you haven't talked about it, the resentment is just going to build the longer and longer that you take to get there.
So are you saying that before you move in with the girl, doesn't matter if it's 3 months, year, 2 years, you should be in the mindset that this girl probably wants to get married, or you've probably had the conversation about it before, and also on top of that, that you should be thinking, if you do want to get married, because not everyone wants to get married, so we're just going to assume that in this case, that a guy does want to get married to a girl, that he should be interested in that before moving in, meaning like he should think like that is something I want to do with this girl before actually cohabitating.
He should be clear on what the expectations are that she has in her mind. So let me give you an example, actually, from my own life. My husband and I moved in together, like I said, before we were married. And it initially came up because he had a roommate that was moving out. And he thought, well, I could get another roommate, but I'm not even sure I love this apartment. I have to look for another roommate, and then I'll have to extend the lease. Or I'm already at my girlfriend's house, me, 3 days a week at least. Maybe I can just move in with her. And so initially he approached me and said, maybe we should move in together out of convenience that it was more of a hassle to look for another roommate. He wasn't quite at the point of marriage, but he wanted to kind of move things along. And so I said to him, I would love to move in with you, but this is my understanding of what that means. I think that means we're on a road towards marriage. Doesn't mean that you have to put a ring on my finger tomorrow. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But I need to know that's where your head is. So let's not do it right now. And I want you to go back home and think about this decision and come back to me when you feel like moving in together means a step towards marriage. And if you want to do that, then I'm happy to have you move in. And he took about a month trip. He took about a month thinking about where he wanted the relationship to go. And ultimately he decided for him, it did mean the same thing that it meant for me. And you know where we are right now.
Two
Kids
two
later.
kids in. All right,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I love it. Very cool.
He's
Very
still
cool.
not really sure he wants to to lock it down. But no, I'm kidding. No, we've been married 10 years now and we have 2 kids and the relationship progressed slowly, but it kept progressing and we kept communicating about what phase we were at each step of the way.
See, that's key right there. I think that you need to be, of course, communicating no matter what, but specifically, you're saying here, communicating about where you guys are at. I think that is very, very important because I think a lot of people, a lot of couples don't necessarily do that in the right way and just kind of just go with things and kind of go with the flow, but don't really have mindful conversations about what's going on in the relationship and knowing if whatever that next step is. I mean, from the beginning all the way to, getting married and having kids, but having those mindful conversations, knowing that everyone is comfortable, everyone's on the same page, everyone is ready for the next step. If they're not, why? Or is everyone on the same levels, everyone thinking in the same way? And it's okay if they're not, but if you guys aren't having those conversations, that's when the fights happen, that's when the blow-ups happen, and that's what can cause potential breakups. And you can save yourself a lot of time and a lot of wasted energy if you have those conversations like you're talking about.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a formal sit down, like you write her a letter.
Yeah.
Dear sweetheart, I have been thinking, it doesn't have to be all that. It can just be you're out at dinner one time and you think, what do you think about this? And then, ladies love to talk. And then you just let her talk and you really listen to what she's saying and try to understand, read between the lines, try to understand where her head is at, and then try to also be honest yourself with where you are. And I think the reason a lot of times people don't have these conversations is because they're scared. They're scared of getting an answer that doesn't line up with what they want. And we're also busy trying to control the outcome to get what we want, that sometimes we miss what's really being said because it would take us in a different direction.
Here's what I say to that. I say that, I think that is you're 100% right. That is one of the biggest fears around communication and why people don't do it as much as they should, because what you said of what the person might say, what the outcome might be. But here's what I think. I think that thinking about this logically, if you don't communicate those things out of fear, it's inevitable that it's going to come up anyways. It just might not come up in that nice casual conversation that you want to have with your partner. So it's all about, do you want to have this conversation right now with the person you're with and talk about those things? Or do you want to wait until it just, I don't know, depending on the situation, there's resentment or you can't hold it in anymore, or the other person brings it up first. It's like eventually you're going to be having these conversations. So you might as well just kind of sack up and do it, do it when you're when you're ready. I mean, when I'm saying when you're ready, meaning it's on your mind and you want to communicate it now, not just waiting out of fear.
Exactly. It does get bigger the longer that you let it sit there. And it gets more complicated. The more that you build your lives together, the harder it is to walk away from it. And you have to get your ultimate needs met. Like if you're the kind of guy who knows you like being in a relationship and you see yourself being married and you see yourself having kids, you have to be with a woman that wants that. I was actually just talking to one of my husband's friends the other night, and he's been in a relationship with a woman for years and years and years. They own a house together. She has no interest in getting married. And he was telling me a story about how one of her close friends had a baby and she was holding the baby. And he thought, like, maybe this will actually turn her around and make her want to have kids. And then she gave the baby back and said, I can't wait to visit. And my heart just broke for him because I could see in that moment he really wanted to be a dad. And probably 5 years ago, he should have either asked that question or been open to hearing the question from her, because now they own property together, and now he's really fallen in love with her. But there's a huge part of his life that is not going to be fulfilled because of this choice to stay with this woman. And there could be another woman out there. There could be another woman that would make him just as happy, but also have the same ultimate life goals and values and be headed in the same direction as him.
Well, let me ask you this. This is going to be more specific for maybe a guy who's listening. Maybe he's dating a girl. Maybe he's even in a relationship. What if that guy doesn't have the answers to those questions? So, for example, I imagine a 22-year-old kid listening right now. And he's like, well, I don't know if I want to get married. I don't even know if I want to have kids. I don't know if I want those things. Should he be dating? Should he be dating a girl? Should he be still looking for a relationship? If so, are these the things you bring up to someone? How does that all work, in your opinion?
I would say that I don't know is actually an answer if it is honest. And too many times we try to change the answer because we don't think it's what the person is going to want to hear. But if that is your true answer, I don't know if I want kids right now. This is how I feel right now. If you're really being honest about it, I think it's kind of like we were saying earlier. You have to keep checking in. So if that is an answer that lines up with what she wants right now, then that's okay. And then if you check in again in 6 months or 12 months, and that's what she wants right then that's okay too. It's this continual process of communicating and checking in that helps us identify if we are on the same path or if we've started to drift apart.
Now, a lot of guys like techniques, strategies. They kind of want to know more specifics. So when do you think how often should a guy be checking in, you think, if he's been dating a girl for, if he plans to date her for quite a while? Like, when do these come up? How should a guy know when to talk about this stuff? It's tough for guys. We're not really prone to these types of conversations. It's a little bit tougher for us, and it's tough for us to express our feelings, especially feelings about a relationship. So any idea of maybe how and when to do something like that throughout a relationship?
Well, really at least every 6 months, I think you should be clear on where the relationship is headed. Luckily for you guys, women are always thinking about these things, so you might not have to initiate this conversation. You just have to show up for it when it happens. But if it hasn't happened, and it's okay for you to ask for what you want and need too, and even if it's not what society tells you is the classic thing. Like I talk to a lot of women now, a lot of my clients say they don't want kids. They don't want to get married. And there's this expectation, because that's what our parents did, or our parents, that everybody has to be on this path of first you meet, and then you date, and then you move in together, and then you get married, or vice versa, and then you have children. And all the rules are being rewritten right now. And that's okay. And you can't let what your parents think you should be doing influence where the relationship is right now and where you want it to go. But you have to be honest. It's you and her, and you have to be honest about where you are in that moment.
I like that. I like that. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's move on. So, okay, we're at the point where the guy has had the conversation with his girlfriend. They're talking about moving in together. What are some best practices here once they're moved in together in order to keep a successful relationship, or maybe things that they should be thinking about?
Well, before you actually put your name on the lease, it's really a good idea to talk about some big scary things like finances, who's paying for what, and you do have to be transparent. If you are moving in with someone, it's not just like my money, her money. You've got to talk about how you're splitting up the bills, how you're splitting up the responsibilities. You should be transparent about how much money you're bringing in so that it's fair. Um, it's not a roommate situation. It's a partnership. So it's not just like, oh, well, your portion of the rent is XYZ. It's we're building a life together. This is the lifestyle that I can afford. I've seen a lot of issues come up for couples that have different thresholds of comfort and different spending habits, and they didn't talk about it in that early phase, or right before moving in together. And that's a really big mistake. Like, maybe she goes out and she wants to buy purses and shoes all the time, and you're more of a saver, or you like to spend your money on vacations and experiences, and she likes to have dinners with her friends. You have to know, you have to have a similar idea about how your combined resources are going to be spent. And then, like, any of those same conversations that you have to have with a roommate. Like, are you going to be having people over? What kind of hours are you keeping? Who's handling the housework? And it's not sexy. I know it's not sexy, but
So unsexy.
it'll make your life a lot easier. And believe me, if your life is easier and her life is easier, you will be having more sex. If you have a lot of drama, it's not happening.
So you have the unsexy conversations to make it sexy in the future.
Exactly. You are so wise, Trip.
Oh, oh, please stop. I love it. Okay, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I think that those are awesome things to be talking about and having those conversations instead of just walking in and kind of guessing or playing it by ear. Because again, it's inevitable. These will come up. Something will happen, and if there's something you don't like, there will be resentment. So again, it's inevitable. It will come up. So why not just have the hard and I don't think it's that hard. I think it's a very reasonable conversation to have in terms of the bills and who's going to be covering what and what the responsibilities are. I mean, what are some of the responsibilities of the home besides like the bill? So besides the money part, what are some other
Who's
responsibilities like chores and things like that?
Yeah, who's doing the dishes? Like, I am not taking out the garbage. It's just not going to happen. But that's okay because my husband knows I'm not going to take out the garbage. But then I'm going to do the dishes. And there are other ways where I contribute where, I believe in equality partnerships. And that, for some of your listeners, might not be how they were raised, or that might not be their worldview. So if you believe in a traditional partnership and you believe that the woman should take on a lot of those responsibilities, you better be sure that she feels the same way. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of dishes in the sink.
There will be a lot of yeah, it will get smelly.
Can
Yes,
I give one little tip for
please.
those that are at the point of moving in together? One thing that I've seen time and time again, it makes it a lot easier if you start off in a neutral space. It is so much harder, and you'll see this on A Question of Love. There are some couples that start in a new space, and there's one couple that moves into a home that one of them already owns. And it's so much harder when you have your life established in a place. You're inviting them in, and you're having to make space within a space that was solely yours to begin with, or in the case of one of these couples, yours and a former partner's place to begin with. So you really want to start fresh if you can, and you have to set up individual space. So you have the shared space And this show shoots in New York, so I know like sometimes there's a limited amount of space that you have just in general, but you want to have her space and his space and places where you can go to get away from each other. And maybe that space is outside, maybe it's in the lobby, maybe it's in the yard, but make sure that you have your man cave or your man desk or your man pillow, and she has her lady place where you can go when you need to regroup and be separate from each other.
Okay, I like that. What if you're living in a really small place, though?
There are infinite ways to divide the space. You can use screens. You can make furniture so that you can create virtual walls. It doesn't actually have to be a separate wall, but it's a place where, if he's in that corner or if he's in that part, or if he says, I need to go for a walk outside, that means he needs to go for a walk outside by himself, right? So it's important to ask for those things. And I think a lot of guys forget, like women, we're used to asking for all of those things. We're used to having our space. And a lot of guys, they get the short end of the closet and all that. Like, don't be afraid. If you need more space, men like shoes too sometimes. If you need more space for your shoes, don't be afraid to ask for it. And then see what you can offer her so that she feels comfortable in this space as well.
I love it. 21st century modern love. Guys can have equal closets too because we have shoes too.
Of course, it doesn't happen in my house, but in other relationships, I've heard it works.
At the end of the day, I think it's safe to say, even though I'm generalizing here, that a woman is just going to have more stuff than a guy. I've never seen it the other way around. I mean, most women just have a lot of clothes, a lot of different outfits, a lot of makeup. They just have more things that they need to, maintain their femininity. And guys, we're pretty simple. I think all my toiletries in the moment fit in a like 1 foot by 4 inch little bag. Like that's everything I have, and that's everything I need. Anything after that is just extra. But
yeah, you have more. She has more physical stuff, but I find that guys sometimes need more space, like more physical, mental space. Because women, we're always going. We can just keep talking, and we could just be together all the time, all day, sun up to sundown. And like I know with my husband and with a lot of my male clients, it's really helpful for them to have that solo time, that man cave time where they can go off and reset and recharge. And it's important that you bring your best into the relationship at all times. I mean, as much as you can. And if you are feeling depleted, or if you're feeling cornered, or if you're just feeling exhausted in the relationship, you're not going to be your best self. And when you're in that pressure cooker of living together and it's all day, every day, it will negatively impact your enjoyment of life. And the point of moving in together is not to do that. It's to enhance your life. So if you set yourself up in the right way, then your life will be better for it, and as opposed to more stressful.
Right. And again, we're talking about having those conversations and figuring those things out and taking the guessing out of it, as unsexy as it is, but doing those things so it could be as smooth as possible. And then less things have to come up, assuming everyone is sticking to all the chores and the things that they've discussed and that they will do. Is there anything else people should be thinking about, guys should be thinking about? So we talked about finances, talked about chores and some responsibilities. What else? And then you talked about having your own space and being able to have your own space within the apartment or the house so you guys can have your alone time and then come back together and it's all nice. Is there anything else?
I think it's also important to understand the role that your family will have, because you want to understand your space that you live in is sometimes a space also for your family. If you live near your mom or your dad, they may be in your life. And so you have to be a unified front, and you have to be a core unit that works together when your family is involved. And this is also something that comes up on A Question of Love. We have a couple that's moving in together out of their parents' homes, and they're in their mid-20s, and this is like the first step in them like moving into their adult life as well as moving in together and separating from one of the moms is a big issue for one of the guys on the show, but he's willing to stand up for his girlfriend, or well, you'll see how willing he is through the series. But that's something that's really important to a lady in your life, that you're her number one priority, that it's not you and your mom anymore. It's you and her. And mom still has an important role, but you have to put the needs of your lady first if you're going to be moving in together and taking that step.
Right. I like that. That's good. That's very good. Okay, cool. What do you think? And maybe we kind of already tackled this with what we've been saying, but do you have any common issues that arise when people are living together? Again, I don't know if we kind of covered that with all the things to talk about and figure out beforehand, but are there any other things that may come up that could cause problems when you're cohabitating?
I think you just kind of got to get in there and see what the things are that come up. We talked about all the big things, the finances, the chores, the future of where you see it going, the shared assets, like do you have pets? And then if something happens, whose pet is it? Do you keep the pet? So knowing what stuff is yours and what stuff is hers at the beginning, and even putting some of this stuff in writing. I know it's so not sexy, but it will just save you a lot of drama in the end. And then just really being open to hearing where your girlfriend is and being able to be vulnerable. And like, hats off to the guys in my show. They were so open and so vulnerable with me, and I think they're going to do a service for men when people see that, like, yeah, men have feelings too, and men have a voice too, and we really give them a voice on A Question of Love. And I'm proud that I got to get some men to open up and share their little soft spots.
Awesome. Wow. Well, you are the ultimate dating coach. I love it. So when does this air? So if guys are listening to this and they're listening to it recently, when is it coming on so they can watch it?
It's on Tuesday nights on FYI. And if you don't have cable, you can still catch it on FYI.tv or on iTunes. You can download the episodes there. And then every week I do the Dates and Mates podcast. So you can subscribe there on iTunes or iHeart or Stitcher or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can get a lot more juicy, modern love advice from me every week.
Awesome. And guys, I highly recommend that you take it because she dishes out really good information. I think you can already tell as she's done on this episode, and we thoroughly covered so many great things in terms of knowing whether you should move in with a girl, and if you do, what are the appropriate things to be talking about to make sure that it's a success. So if you want to see more of Damona, like she said, check out A Question of Love on FYI. I'll put that information in the description. Check out Dates and Mates. I'll put that link in the description as well. And Damona, always a pleasure. You're so smart.
Oh, you're so smart too. I'm a huge fan of yours, Trip. So thank you for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, and hopefully we'll do it again in the future.